Wheel of Time community, and welcome to the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Tim.
And together, we're going to walk through Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time book series. How you doing, Tim?
Doing okay. It's been an interesting week. How you doing?
I'm good. Although, I think spring is going to kill me before the end of it.
Yeah.
These allergies are terrible.
Oh, you've been having a bad week.
Yeah. Pollen, man. Pollen.
It's a thing.
Anyway, before we get started, we just want to remind you that this is a reread. We assume that you've read the entire series, so there will be spoilers. You have been warned. All right, Tim, what are we going to be doing in today's episode?
Today we will be discussing chapters 20 and 21 of The Great Hunt, where Rand is distracted by something big and shiny, and they stay in a village inn. Chapter 20 is called Saidin, and the icon is the dragon fane.
Here's a quick summary to act as a reminder for those of you who are not reading along with us. Rand and Co. ride through the night, only stopping at dawn to rest their horses. Saidin insists on singing the horn again the moment they stop, but Rand tells her no. He wants to keep the dagger shut up and away from them as much as possible. Saidin turns on the charm and flirts for all she's worth to get her way. Rand asks her again if she's Aes Sedai, which infuriates her. She spends the rest of the day in a snit, even freezing out Huron and Loyal. Eventually, she regains her composure around the other two, but she continues to give Rand the cold shoulder. They see a village in the distance, and the men look forward to sleeping in beds again. Saidin scoffs at the idea of a village inn, and they argue back and forth a bit until Rand can get them moving again toward the village. Rand sees something shiny glittering in the setting sun and goes in for a closer look. He comes to the edge of an enormous excavation pit where he finds a gigantic stone hand holding a crystal sphere. Rand is captivated, and the void forms without his realizing it. Saidin tells him that it is dangerous and to come away, but Rand wants to find a way down to get closer. She tries to reason with him, but Saidin is singing to him, and the sphere seems to pulse with the rhythm of it. Saidin swears to go to the village with him and not to mention the horn again if he will just come away. Rand tries to release the void, but it will not go. He tries to force it away, and he goes into sort of a fugue state where he's muttering the Ale Oath as he fights against the power filling him. The void finally releases him, and he almost pitches over the edge of the pit before he can pull his horse back to safety. The others are still staring at him, but Rand can't remember what happened. Loyal gives him a quick rundown of what he saw, but it looks like the guards have spotted them, and Rand decides they should get going towards the village. The villagers look friendly enough, and the inn at the top of the hill is called the Nine Rings, which Rand takes as a good sign. Rand notices that Saidin looks uneasy, and he asks her about it. She tells him that he had terrified her back there and implores him to ride away with her. He can take the horn, and she will be by his side forever. Rand tells her that he can't go because the horn is not his, and she angrily turns her back on him.
One of the reasons I do not like this section of the book is that Saidin can be so petulant. Mm-hmm. Like, she comes off very childish, and I'm shocked that she holds Rand in her thrall for so long. She's being so demanding about the horn in this chapter, so much so that the book says that she suddenly seemed as old and as cold as the mountains, and more regal than Queen Morgase at her haughtiest. I get that Rand is young, and his experience with women is very limited, but he really needs to get it together. Like, he does seem to be more able to resist her now, though. He's not giving in to her every wish like he was doing before he got the horn.
Yeah, she really is coming at him with both barrels, but he's able to resist. The book says, quote, "She came to him, a sway in her walk that made him feel as if he had something caught in his throat. All I want is to see it in the light of day. I won't even touch it. You hold it. It would be something for me to remember. You holding the Whore of Valair in your hands." She took his hand as she said it. Her touch made his skin tingle and his mouth go dry. So he's still super tempted by her.
Yeah.
But he has enough resolve to tell her no.
Like, one thing that kind of pulls Rand back to reality is the fact that he feels manipulated by Saidin.
Right.
Like, took him long enough, but Rand has already equated a woman trying to manipulate him with being Aes Sedai, and he has a huge aversion to Aes Sedai. I would say that it's the good old Manetheren stubbornness, but Rand is not of that bloodline. So it just must be his Two Rivers upbringing. Mm-hmm. We get a hint of some of Lanfear's emotional baggage here, too. Like, she was an Aes Sedai at one point, and one of the most powerful. She's lived long enough to know that the Aes Sedai of this day only know a portion of what her counterparts did. She can't stand being compared to them because she sees them as ignorant children, totally beneath her. Mm-hmm. Again, a slightly petty outlook of her present situation. She stays angry and sullen for most of this chapter.
Mm-hmm. So the most important part of this chapter, of course, is the Code and Call.
Right.
I'm not sure how much we want to say about it here, though. It plays a huge part in later books, but it's still a mystery here.
Yeah.
So how about we just do like a rough outline just to remind you of what it is.
Okay.
If it's been a while since you've read the series. So the Code and Call is actually a pair of two giant sangreal. The one that Rand sees here is the male half. The female half is buried on one of the Sea Folk Islands, Tremalking. And Bail Doman mentions it to Rand in the Eye of the World when he's on the spray heading towards Whitebridge.
Right.
They're two of the most powerful sangreal ever created. And they're only safe to use when channeling through access keys that act as a buffer. Otherwise, you draw too much of the power and then burn yourself to a crisp. No bueno.
No, not at all. When Rand encounters the statue, he's totally drawn into it. He does not know what its purpose is, and that's understandable since only a few Aes Sedai even suspect what it is. But the fact that Lanfear breaks character and is genuinely worried about what will happen if he touches the source while standing next to it speaks volumes to how dangerous it would be. Mm-hmm. Later, we'll learn more about the Code and Call, but reading this for the first time, you don't really get what was happening to Rand and why he's so affected. When I read this now, it's like watching a kid playing with a grenade. Rand could have seriously killed himself without even trying and possibly created another dragon mount, breaking the world in the process. Mm-hmm. Without the access key to buffer him from Saidin, you may as well be trying to drink water from a fire hose.
Yeah. Lanfear is freaking out.
Yeah.
Rand is in a dissociative state where he isn't really recognizing what's going on around him. At first, she tries to command him away. Then, when that doesn't work, she tries reasoning with him that if they get any closer, they're going to fall to their deaths in the pit, or else they'll be caught by the guards and arrested. Mm-hmm. And then finally, when nothing else works, she starts pleading with him and making promises. She is legit shaken up by what happens here.
Totally. One thing I'm still confused about is the Song of Saidin. Like, in this whole section, it's described as Saidin singing to him, and the sphere is pulsing to the rhythm of the song. What does that mean? Like, what song? I know that LTT had the voice and that people with the talent can use the power to manipulate things to grow. But I don't know if that's the song that's happening here. Maybe the reason Rand hears Saidin singing could be because of the latent talent. And maybe Saidin is, at its core, linked to the same purpose as the growing song? I'm probably reading too much into it here, but if the taint of the Dark One has not corrupted the core of Saidin, then it could be that what starts Rand off on the journey to cleanse Saidin. And later we get this same statue will come into play to actually remove the taint. What do you think about the song and how it impacts Rand here?
I don't know why Saidin is described as singing to Rand here, because that's not usually the wording Jordan uses.
Right.
But I don't think it has anything to do with the voice or the song that you're referring to.
Okay.
It's an interesting theory, but I don't think I agree. When it says that Saidin crooned to him, it could just be descriptive language to say that Saidin tried to woo Rand or tempt him in a way that he's never experienced before. It pulses in a rhythm, but I think, or I guess I see that more as of a heartbeat.
Okay.
And I don't think that there's a literal song.
Okay. Well, I'm not sold on that theory, but it just I saw a song and started connecting points.
Yeah, I'm sure you're not the only person to have thought that. I just personally don't agree.
Okay. Fair enough.
But when he's fighting against Saidin, he reaches deep inside himself. Quote, reached for the core of who he was, the core of what he was. And what he finds there is the Ale Oath.
Yeah.
We first hear it back in The Eye of the World in chapter 36, when Loyal meets Rand for the first time and thinks that he's an Owlman. Till shade is gone, till water is gone, into the shadow with teeth bared, screaming defiance with the last breath to spit in Sightblighter's eyes on the last day. And that's what finally manages to break him free from the hold Saidin has on him, and the void finally leaves him.
Yeah. Interesting. Mm-hmm. So they go on their way to the village and the inn at the top of the hill. The book says, the 9 rings. Rand swung down with a smile and tied Red to one of the hitching posts in the front. The 9 rings had been one of his favorite adventure stories when he was a boy. He supposed it still was. This is a nice little nod to the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. So it's good that Rand stands his ground and they stay at the inn, but I'm a little confused. Does Rand have any money? Like, how do they intend to pay?
That's a really good question. I have no idea.
Because, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, there was a major part of The Eye of the World is that he and Matt didn't have any money. So
right?
They were, sleeping in bushes, and then he learned that he could play for his supper. Maybe his month or so in Faldara, he got some money?
Maybe. I just get this... He's a lord now, so I don't see him busting out his flute and, playing for their supper with, his servants in tow.
Well, I mean, we'll see in the next chapter that, he thinks that he is going to have to, at some point, that his money's going to run out. But I don't know where his money came from.
Interesting.
We know that Matt and Perrin were gambling with some of the guys in Faldara.
That's true.
So maybe Rand's did too during his time there. He gets money somehow. Maybe Moraine set aside some since the boys were going to be leaving.
There was a fair amount of time that passes in Faldara that's not in this book. That's between the two books.
Yeah.
So maybe something happened there.
Maybe when she gave him all of his new clothes, there was a small coin purse.
Maybe. I can see that. It's just interesting that Robert Jordan does so much detail and then leaves that out here. So,
well, I mean, he probably figures no one cares. How Rand got enough money to stay in the inn is not really important to the story.
True.
So, and it's over 4 million words. You're asking for more?
Yes,
I want to know exactly how much he has, how he got it. Was he washing dishes in Valdara? I want to know.
What currency did it come in? How much did it weigh? What bag? What was the bag made of?
Was it a Tarblan gold coin? Was it an Andor gold coin? Yeah.
Oh, I forget. This isn't the Lord of the Rings. Oh, I'm sorry. Right. Okay. Moving on.
Anyway. So Celine is not okay.
No, she's not.
And Rand asked her if she's all right. She makes one last attempt to get Rand to herself. You terrified me, she said in a tight voice, and I do not frighten easily. You could have killed yourself. She smoothed her dress. Ride with me, tonight, now. Bring the horn, and I will stay by your side forever. Think of it. Me by your side, and the horn of Valere in your hands. And that will only be the beginning, I promise. What more could you ask for? And to his credit, Rand doesn't hesitate. Her spell over him seems to be broken.
Yeah.
He tells her the horn isn't his, and that's pretty much the end of it. So, yeah.
Girlfriend's got issues.
For sure.
Yeah.
Lots and lots, as we'll see later.
Just a few. That wraps up chapter 20. But before we get to chapter 22, here's a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru is brought to you by Weekly Wheel News. Weekly Wheel News, Randland's only reliable news source. Keep up to date on Elida's mission to make Andor great again, trending food crazes, and the truth behind everything going on in the Wheel of Time. Editor-in-Chief Rob Christensen says, if you don't believe us, you're probably a dark friend. Weekly Wheel News. Find them on Tumblr at weeklywheelnews.tumblr.com or on Twitter at news_wheel. Chapter 21 is called The 9 Rings, and the icon is Tom's harp. even though Tom's not in this chapter. This is the only time in the series that the harp appears without the presence of Tom Maryland.
Weird, huh?
Weird.
I mean, I get that Rand does play in this chapter, but...
He doesn't play Tom's harp.
No, he never plays Tom's harp.
He plays the
flute.
So, yeah.
Weird.
Whatever.
Anyway, back to the summary. Rand finds a group of soldiers in the common room of the Nine Rings with their commanding officer seated separately from his men. The innkeeper, Mistress Madwyn, is a friendly and talkative woman with a keen eye for detail. She takes in Rand's finely embroidered coat, heron-marked sword, and Celine's nice dress and greets them as a lord and a lady. While showing them to their table, she asks if they are hunters for the horn, since she's had a few come through her inn already. Rand tells her that they are definitely not hunting for the horn. Mistress Madwyn is surprised when Rand lets Huron, who plainly looks like a servant, speak freely, and even more surprised when he lets Huron sit at the table with him. Carian sensibilities being what they are. Celine is cold and cranky the whole time. After their meal, Mistress Madwyn, who noticed the flute case, asks Rand if he would allow his man to play a little music. Rand explains that he's the one who plays, and Mistress Madwyn withdraws the offer, embarrassed. Feeling nostalgic and realizing that there may come a day soon when he will have to play for his supper again, Rand says that he doesn't mind and agrees to play a few tunes. Celine looked at him as if wondering what he was, which sparks a stubborn streak in Rand, and he deliberately chooses common tunes for simple people. Eventually, the soldiers start to sing along with Rand's playing and making jabs at each other's voices. When Rand finishes, the officer makes a sharp gesture to dismiss the soldiers, and they bow to him and Rand before leaving. The officer, Captain Aldrin Caldwin, comes over to Rand and says he hopes his men did not insult him with their common ways. Rand says they didn't and invites him to sit. Caldwin asks for Rand's name and has definitely noticed the heron-marked sword. He asks some probing questions, keeping a conversational tone, but seemingly trying to catch Rand in a lie. He's momentarily dumbstruck by Celine's beauty, but snaps out of it quickly. When he asks after her name, a serving girl drops an oil lamp and starts a small fire before she can answer. Once the fire is stamped out, the innkeeper chastises her to be careful. She tells Mistress Madwyn that she was being careful, but she had such a twinge in her arm. Celine takes advantage of the distraction to ask Mistress Madwyn for her room, claiming that she isn't feeling well. She makes it clear that she wants to room alone. After Celine leaves, Rand asks Caldwin about the giant crystal sphere. He warily tells Rand that it's part of a statue from the Age of Legends, and the king himself ordered the excavation to have it brought to the capital. He asks Rand how long he'll be in town, and when Rand says they leave in the morning, he tells Rand that he has some soldiers going that way and suggests that they ride with him. It does not sound like a request. Mistress Madwyn returns and offers Rand some advice in love regarding his lady. Rand thanks her and surprises her again when he says that he, Loyal, and Huron will share a room. Once alone in their rooms, Rand asks the other two if they know what the deal was with that officer and why he was so suspicious. They explain Des Demar, the game of houses, to him. Neither Huron nor Loyal know too much about it, but they explain how the nobles are always playing angles and running schemes to gain advantage over each other. They also warn Rand that the game is especially dangerous in Carian, who play it more than most. They figure Celine will know more about it and suggest that Rand ask her in the morning. But when morning comes, Celine is gone. She leaves him a note saying that she had to go, but she will wait for him in Carian. Caldwin introduces Rand to the head of his escort of soldiers and is surprised and displeased to find that Celine has disappeared during the night. Huron whispers to Rand that he must have had the inn watched. Full of consternation and surrounded by suspicious soldiers, Rand rides on to Carian.
To be honest, there isn't a lot to say about this chapter. It serves to wrap up the previous chapter by giving us a little more info about the Coden Call and to prep us for Rand's arrival in Carian by introducing the game of houses. Otherwise, there isn't much going on, but let's get into it. I like that at this point, Rand can tell the men in the common room are soldiers just by looking at them. They aren't wearing armor or carrying weapons, but they have a look of soldiers that Rand recognizes from his time in Faldara.
This village is on the outskirts of civilization. It's literally the first village you come to when you get out of the mountains. But even so, we can see how carefully the innkeeper tries to navigate the social dynamics of Rand's party. The people of Carian are very prickly when it comes to propriety and social hierarchy. Yeah. They get insulted very easily. Jordan did a great job easing us into what we're going to be met with in Carian by pointing out all the minor adjustments Mistress Madwyn does when navigating Rand's group.
Yeah.
Like, she is sharp, and while she's very friendly, it's easy to see how fast her mind is working to make sure she isn't offending a lord and a lady in any way.
Yeah, she's continually surprised by how informal Rand is. She assumes that Huron is a hired man, mostly because Huron keeps acting like one.
Right.
And so when he's allowed to speak freely and when he takes a seat at Rand's table, she has to make all these mental adjustments.
Yeah, totally. So Carian is close enough to studying Sofu that the Ogier builders still visit the city to do upkeep on the buildings. So seeing Loyal isn't as huge of a shock as it was in Andor.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a surprise because this village is so far from the capital, but Loyal doesn't cause a stir, and there's no mob of people shouting Trolloc and chasing him through the streets with torches, so that's good.
Yeah.
Angry mobs. I just want to talk about the food for a sec.
Okay.
Mistress Madwyn says that the dish that she serves is pork with yellow peppers. The book says, quote, "The pork was cut in small bits, mixed with long strips of yellow peppers and peas, and a number of vegetables and things he did not recognize, all in some sort of clear, thick sauce. It smelled sweet and sharp both at the same time." End quote. Is it just me, or does this sound like Chinese food? Or at least our bastardized American version of Chinese food?
Right.
Like, I don't know what Jordan was going for, but it sounds delicious.
Throw in some chow mein, you're ready to go.
Yeah. Like, am I right? Like, is that how you read it?
Yeah, I kind of see it that way, yes.
Okay.
We get this scene where Rand pulls out the flute and plays a few songs, and I forgot how much I enjoy these kind of scenes.
Yeah.
Like, he stubbornly plays common songs to get under Celine's skin, and the soldiers start to sing along, and there's this jovial spirit to the common room for a few minutes. It's a sweet little moment, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. When Mistress Madwyn comes back after getting Celine settled, she tries to give Rand advice on how to handle his woman. Quote, "For 23 years, Baron Madwyn and I were arguing when we weren't kissing, so to speak. That's by way of saying I have some experience. Right now, you're thinking your lady never wants to see you again, but it's my way of thinking that if you tap on her door tonight, she'll be taking you in. Smile and say it was your fault, whether it was or not." She thoroughly embarrasses Rand, and obviously this isn't the relationship that he has with Celine, but I thought the attempt was sweet, if a bit misguided. I also love that when they discover Celine is gone, Mistress Madwyn hands him the note and says, "If you'll forgive me, my lord, you should have listened to me. You should have tapped on your lady's door." I just thought it was funny.
It is. Speaking of that note, we finally get rid of Celine.
Yay!
I thought her note sounded kind of stalkery and a little bit creepy.
Yeah.
Here's what it says. "I will await you in Carian. Never think that I'm too far away from you. You will be in my thoughts always, and I know that I'm in yours." Maybe it's just because I know that Celine is Lanfear in disguise, and maybe if I didn't have that information, I would think twice about it, but I found it unsettling.
I think so, too. It was a little much. So Caldwin is very unhappy that Celine was able to sneak off in the middle of the night because he was having the Inn watched, which is the game of houses at play. So let's talk about Des Damar.
Okay.
Here is what the Wheel of Time wiki has to say about it. Des Damar is a phrase in the Old Tongue which translates to the great game, but is more commonly known as the game of houses. It refers to the political and social maneuvering employed by the nobility of various nations to gain status or wealth, or to cause the downfall of others they dislike. The great game is played the most heavily in Carrion, where the most seemingly irrelevant act can cause lords and ladies to speculate endlessly about one's motives. Even servants of the Carinian nobility play their own version of Des Damas. Conversely, it is rarely seen in the Borderlands, as Borderlanders are more concerned with the shadow spawn and the blight than individual power, status, or wealth. It has been stated that the best way to put players of the great game off balance is to be honest, since no one expects you to be. This has been the case with both Rand and Perrin. Obviously, Desdemar plays a huge role in these books.
Yeah.
But the basic rundown is that it's the games nobles play to further their advantage over each other. It's up for debate if the game is at its most dangerous in Carrion or the White Tower. But most nations have at least some version of the game going, except in the Borderlands when they have real problems to deal with.
Yeah, real problems.
Yeah.
That ends chapters 20 and 21 of The Great Hunt. Join us next week for chapters 22 and 23, where Moraine and Lan seek answers in unexpected places, and Nynaeve faces her first test in the tower.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru.
We'll see you again next week. Make sure that you rate and subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. If you could leave us a positive review, it would really help us out. It makes us more visible so people can find us. You can tweet us at Pod-Thru or email us at whatpodthru@gmail.com and tell us your thoughts on anything we covered today.
That's WOTPODTHRU@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody, and we hope the wheel weaves you in our direction again soon. That's a good point, Bear.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
That's a great... No, yeah.
I just thought that you needed a second. Like a refocusing.
You should totally keep that.